Happy New Year's Eve. It's the end of the year, and while everyone else is out celebrating, we're doing our own kind of celebration.
Yeah.
A deep dive, you know?
The deep dive
To
into
all the big stories from today, December 31st, 2024.
Right. We've got a news recap highlighting the top global happenings.
Yeah.
And we'll be taking a closer look at a few in-depth articles, too.
So settle in and get ready for a journey from global conflicts to feel-good stories.
From struggling businesses to
education.
Yeah, and maybe we'll even find a hidden gem or two in the day's news.
Okay, well, the first story that really caught my eye was this UN report on the situation in Gaza.
Yeah.
It's pretty grim.
It is. The report condemns Israel's attacks on hospitals in Gaza.
Right.
And accuses them of deliberately targeting these medical facilities.
These are facilities serving children, too.
Absolutely. And, we're not just talking about buildings here.
Right.
This is about denying people essential medical care, creating a huge humanitarian crisis.
Yeah. The UN calls it incalculable suffering, and they even suggest the possibility of war crimes.
Right.
Which really underscores just how serious this is.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict.
And the need for intervention.
Yeah.
It's a tough question, but where do we draw the line in war?
Oh, that's it.
How do we balance military objectives with protecting innocent lives?
It's a question that's been around forever.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to deal with the ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're on the topic of difficult situations, we have the story of those two young girls abandoned at the U.S. border.
It's heartbreaking. Imagine the desperation that leads someone to do something like that.
Right.
The girls are from El Salvador.
Yeah.
And were found with a note claiming they were sent by the Honduran president.
Asking for them to be sent to Delaware.
Yeah.
This story highlights the complexities of immigration.
It does.
And it gets even more complicated when we consider Vice President Kamala Harris's statement from earlier this year.
Right when she visited Guatemala and said, "Do not come."
Right.
It shows just how tough the U.S. is being on border security.
Yeah.
But it also shows a real disconnect between policy and the actual lives of the people seeking refuge.
It's about real lives.
Yeah.
Caught in a system that seems impossible to navigate.
Absolutely.
What are our responsibilities as citizens of a global community?
Yeah, those are tough questions.
For sure. Okay, well, let's move from geopolitics to another area with a lot of tension. Culture.
Right.
J.K. Rowling is back in the spotlight, and as expected, her words have caused quite a stir.
Yeah, she reignited the debate around transgender rights with a tweet.
A now-deleted tweet.
That's right.
About the rising number of children identifying as transgender.
Yeah, her comments sparked discussions about biological sex, gender identity, and even free speech.
Rowling is no stranger to controversy, but this time her words seem to have hit a nerve.
It seems like the conversation is getting more and more polarized.
Right.
It makes it harder to find common ground.
So how do we balance the right to express our opinions with the responsibility to avoid harming others?
We need to find a way to have conversations that are respectful and nuanced.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so from online debates to a different kind of departure.
Okay.
Acclaimed Bollywood director Anurag Kashyap is leaving Mumbai.
Yeah.
And it's making people wonder if this is a sign of something bigger happening in the film industry.
His reasons for leaving are interesting. He's disillusioned with Bollywood's current focus on profits.
Rather than artistry.
Right, and he thinks aspiring actors are more interested in fame and fortune than honing their craft.
It feels symbolic, like Bollywood is losing its soul.
It's definitely a warning sign.
Can artistic integrity survive in an industry driven by profit?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and what does this mean for storytelling in film?
Especially with streaming services changing everything.
Right. Okay, well, speaking of transformations, let's look at the retail world.
Okay.
Big Lots. The discount retailer managed to secure a deal to keep a lot of its stores open.
Hundreds of stores.
Even though they filed for bankruptcy earlier this year.
It is surprising.
Especially with so many other stores closing.
Yeah, Gordon Brothers retail partners and variety wholesalers stepped in to give Big Lots a second chance.
Yeah.
It's a win for the employees and the communities, too.
Yeah, and maybe even for the whole retail sector.
Absolutely. It shows that even with all the economic uncertainty, there's still room for innovation.
And speaking of positive change, California's Healthy Homework Act caught my attention.
Yeah, it's great to see a state taking steps to deal with student stress.
The act encourages schools to rethink their homework policies.
Right, focusing on quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And moving away from the idea that more homework equals better learning.
we've been piling on the pressure for too long.
Right.
This new law is a positive step towards a more balanced approach.
It is. How much homework is too much?
That's a good question.
And how can we create learning environments that support both academic achievement and well-being?
Now, from education reform, we go to a train station in India, where a simple story of love has gone viral.
Bimrao and Shobha, an elderly couple who've been selling snacks at train station for 43 years.
Wow.
Despite Bimrao's visual impairment, their love and resilience are inspiring.
It's a story that seems to have touched people everywhere.
Yeah.
Reminding us about connection and finding joy, even when things are tough.
Yeah. It's a beautiful contrast to some of the heavier news.
Yeah, for sure.
A reminder that even with all the conflict and uncertainty, love and hope are still out there.
Their story really does warm the heart. Speaking of things that bring us joy, let's talk entertainment.
Okay.
Squid Game 2 is getting a lot of buzz with its new take on rock, paper, scissors.
They're calling it -1, and you use both hands.
Oh, wow.
It adds a whole new layer of strategy.
Yeah.
People online are already debating the rules and trying to figure out how to win.
It's amazing how Squid Game has captured everyone's imagination. And it's cool to see how a simple game can be made into something so exciting.
It shows how much we love games and competition.
Okay, well, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
we
have to take a little detour into the bazaar.
Right, you can't have a news roundup without it.
Exactly. We need to remember that life isn't always serious.
True.
And sometimes the most unexpected stories are the ones that stick with us.
Yeah. Okay, so in British Columbia, we have a wave of flower thefts.
People's gardens are being raided.
Bylaw officers are confused.
And the floral black market is booming.
And if that wasn't strange enough,
right,
there's also a report of a woman in Penticton who found a half-naked man in her kitchen.
What?
After he vandalized her guest room.
Oh, no.
Apparently he got in through an unlocked door.
That's a good reminder to always double-check your locks.
Oh, yeah.
And to top it all off, an elderly man accidentally drove his car into Skaha Lake.
Oh, my goodness.
Thankfully, he's okay, but I bet that was a shock.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What about India? Any strange happenings there?
We have a nice story about celebrity chef Vikas Khanna, who visited the Golden Temple.
Oh, that's nice.
After his restaurant got a Michelin star.
Right.
And on a more perplexing note, Goa is unusually quiet this New Year's Eve.
Really?
Usually it's known for its big parties, but it seems people are going elsewhere this year.
Interesting.
Places like Bali or Vietnam.
Maybe Goa's party reputation has finally caught up with it.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe people are just looking for something different.
That's true.
Either way, it's a reminder that even traditions and expectations can change.
Absolutely. And sometimes change is good.
Okay, well, before we move on to the second part of our deep dive, let's think about what we've learned.
Okay.
We've seen the best and worst of humanity.
Yeah.
Stories that challenge us, inspire us, and even make us laugh.
Right. But most importantly, we've been reminded that even with all the chaos, there's still hope, resilience, and a little bit of wonder out there.
It's a good reminder as we head into a brand new year.
It is. And as you listen to the next part, we encourage you to consider how all these different events connect.
Right.
How do global politics impact individual lives?
Yeah.
How do economic trends shape our culture? And how do all these stories help us understand the world?
These are good questions to think about as we say goodbye to 2024 and get ready for whatever comes next.
It's amazing how just one day of news can show how everything's connected.
Yeah.
We've talked about global conflicts and how they affect people's lives, economic trends changing whole industries, and cultural shifts happening all over the world.
Right.
But even with all that complexity, we still see stories of love and kindness.
It's like we're seeing a huge tapestry up close and far away at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in. What's sticking with you the most from all these stories?
I keep thinking about that children's hospital in Gaza.
Yeah.
It's so different from the joy of those snack vendors in India.
Right.
It makes me wonder, are we paying enough attention to the suffering in these conflict zones?
Are we doing enough to protect the people who need it most?
Yeah.
It's a question that I think about too.
Me too.
Those children in Gaza deserve a chance at a life without violence and fear.
Right.
But they're trapped in a conflict that seems to have no end.
It shows just how urgently we need peace and diplomacy.
Yeah.
But it also shows how complicated these situations are.
Right.
There are no easy answers. And finding a lasting peace means everyone has to work together.
It's a hard thing to think about as we start a new year.
It is.
But maybe it's something we need to think about. We can't ignore the suffering that's happening.
Right.
And speaking of things we can't ignore, that story about California's Healthy Homework Act is a good reminder that change is possible.
It's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, recognizing that students are under so much pressure these days.
Right.
And putting their well-being on the same level as academic achievement is a big change for education.
It's about time.
I know, right? We've been pushing kids too hard for too long, and it's affecting their mental health.
It is.
What if we changed how we think about homework? Could we make learning more supportive?
That's a good question.
Could we create a place where students can succeed academically and emotionally?
It's worth exploring.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to rethink what a good education really means.
Right.
And how we measure success.
Yeah.
But it's about making a system that cares about the whole child.
I hope other states will follow California's lead.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, now on a lighter note, that story about Big Lots avoiding bankruptcy and keeping all those stores open is a bit of good news in the retail world.
It's a real underdog story.
Yeah, it shows how resilient a company can be.
Right, and the power of creative problem solving.
It makes you wonder, could this be a turning point for Big Lots?
Maybe.
Could it be a sign that retailers are finding new ways to adapt?
It's possible.
What do you think?
We are seeing more and more physical stores using online platforms and offering more diverse products. This deal with Gordon Brothers retail partners and variety wholesalers shows that even in a tough market, there's still room for innovation and growth.
And speaking of tough environments, let's go back to J.K. Rowling and the transgender rights debate.
Okay.
It's a topic that always seems to be filled with tension.
It does.
No matter what you think, it seems like someone will be offended.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue with no easy answers.
Right.
Trying to balance free speech with protecting marginalized communities is a tough thing to do.
Rowling's comments have caused a lot of strong reactions, both positive and negative.
Yeah.
How can we talk about these sensitive topics without attacking each other or shutting people down?
I think it takes a willingness to listen with empathy.
Right.
To understand that there are many different points of view.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that language changes.
Right.
And what might have been okay to say in the past might not be okay now.
It's a process that needs patience, understanding, and a commitment to finding common ground. Okay, let's move on to Bollywood, where Anurag Kashyap's decision to leave Mumbai has started a conversation about the future of Indian film.
His leaving brings up some important questions about art and money in filmmaking.
Right.
Is Bollywood too focused on box office numbers?
At the expense of artistic vision.
Yeah. Are actors forgetting about the craft because they want fame and fortune?
It seems like that's a struggle in any creative field.
It is the tension between artistic vision and making money.
Yeah, it's been around forever.
It has, but how do we find a balance?
Right. How do we make sure that art isn't just a product?
Yeah.
That it stays a powerful way to tell stories and reflect on our culture and society?
That's an important conversation to have.
It is. Okay, well, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's have a little fun and go back to some of the weirder news stories from today.
Yeah, it's good to find some humor.
Right. It keeps us grounded.
It does.
And reminds us not to take things too seriously.
Okay, so we had those flower thefts in British Columbia.
It seems like someone really loves those petunias.
And they don't care about property lines.
And don't forget about that half-naked guy in Penticton.
Right. Always lock your doors.
Even if you think your neighborhood is safe.
Yeah.
And then there's the guy who drove his car into Skaha Lake.
Oh, yeah.
It just shows that even the most normal things can go wrong.
Absolutely. And sometimes those unexpected moments make the best stories. What about in India? Any other quirky news?
Well, it looks like Goa's reputation for crazy New Year's Eve parties is taking a hit.
Really?
Yeah, the beaches are pretty quiet this year. People are going to other places.
Interesting.
It makes you wonder, has Goa's party scene lost its appeal?
Maybe.
Or are people just looking for something different this year?
Could be it, too.
Whatever the reason, it shows that even traditions and expectations can change.
Right. Nothing stays the same forever.
And sometimes change is good.
It is.
Okay, so as we go into the last part of our deep dive, let's think about how all these seemingly random events might fit together. How do these individual stories tell us something bigger about the world?
Yeah.
How do they shape how we see ourselves as individuals and as a global community?
These are good questions to consider.
Yeah.
As you listen to the last part, keep an open mind.
Right.
Embrace the complexities.
Yeah.
And look for those hidden connections.
Right. Those connections that are often hidden beneath the surface of the news. It's amazing how even the strangest stories can get us thinking.
Right.
We've gone from flower thieves to the future of Bollywood all in one deep dive.
It is interesting how all these stories put together
Yeah.
show us the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like each news item is a little piece of a giant puzzle.
Right. We've seen conflict and division, but also people overcoming challenges and wanting to connect.
Yeah.
From the snack vendors in India to that story about Shafiq's Khana at the Golden Temple.
Right.
It seems like people always find a way to stay positive.
It's important to see that, especially when so much of the news is negative.
Yeah.
Those little bits of hope remind us that even when things are tough,
There's still beauty, kindness, and love in the world.
like we need to pay attention to those little acts of kindness.
Exactly.
The ones that don't always make the headlines.
Yeah, the smaller stories often tell us more about being human
Yeah.
than the big political stories.
Okay, so as we finish up this New Year's Eve deep dive,
Yeah.
let's appreciate all the stories that make up our world.
Yeah.
The good and the bad, the heartwarming and the strange.
Maybe the most important stories aren't the ones that are the loudest,
Right?
but the ones that teach us about ourselves and what it means to be human.
The ones that remind us that we're capable of love and resilience.
Yeah, and even a little absurdity.
It's a good reminder to listen for those stories in the new year.
Definitely. Who knows what we'll discover?
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year.
And thanks for joining us on this journey through today's news.
Yeah.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new way of looking at things.
And maybe even sparked some interesting conversations.
Thanks for listening.